recapping. At one point, I thought I would try to do a one-sided debate between multiple views on the passage of Genesis 6, but I decided I'm not up for that. I learned that pretty quick, that I wasn't up for that task, and so I didn't do that. So I'm just going to teach it the way I understand it. The words on your screen are God's judgments endure forever and they're righteous. What a wonderful truth. When God destroys somebody, you can bet it was a righteous judgment. He's never judged unrighteously, and that's a beautiful thing. I put that verse in there, or a snippet of the verse, but he put enmity between thy seed and between the woman and between thy seed and her seed. Because the message in Genesis 6 is where we begin to start to see the enmity between the seeds. And the story we're going to look at today is the story of preserving a seed. It's an absolutely beautiful story to know that God made a promise in the garden and said, through Adam, through his seed, a Messiah would come. It's my understanding that from that point, Satan set out to try to destroy the human race. Because he knew he had a verbal thing that he understood, that God was going to send a seed. So, Genesis 6. We're going to read Genesis 6 and then we're going to look at part of it. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also his flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every imagination of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing and fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in it in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make in the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, and lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make in it. And behold, even I do bring a flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee will I establish my covenant. And thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring in the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. Something happens in the beginning of Genesis 6 that is so vile so disruptive, so bad that God says he was grieved at his heart. And I must destroy, speaking as God, I must destroy everything which I have made. He had to destroy it all. And so he did. But we're not in Genesis 7. That's the story of the flood. We're in Genesis 6. And we are going to look at this topic of giants. It is my understanding, right there on the screen, giants, one of Satan's attempts to destroy the seed. The story we're going to look at today is of that seed, the promised seed coming. And we're going to look at this in 4 different ways. We're going to look at it through Bible text. We're going to look at it through ancient texts. We're going to look at it through archaeology and current times to see whether or not my sentiment is true, that Satan has been after the seed from the very beginning. So, biblical text. We're going to recap on 6, 1 through 4. And in this passage it says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men. And it says there were giants in the earth in those days, and after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. We're going to take a quick minute and look at that phrase, sons of God. If you were to type that phrase into your concordance or read it in your concordance, just as it appears, sons of God, it only appears a few times in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we are referred to as sons of God, right? Born again people, behold what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon you, that you should be called the sons of God. We are called sons of God if you are born again. These sons of God in the Old Testament, we're going to see how he talks to them. Job 1:6 says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. Okay, well, Satan and us have never gone, or mankind has never gone to present ourselves before the Lord. So this is clearly a reference to something else. Not mankind, not physical mankind. We didn't go present ourselves before God. If anybody knows the story, I'm not giving the context, but you understand the story of Job. When Job is afflicted or Job's doing great, and Satan comes to present himself, and God says, hey, have you noticed my servant Job? And then the dialogue starts between them. Second time it appears, it's same thing when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them to present himself before the Lord. So again, it's in the same story, 2nd chapter. And then in the end of Job, he uses the same phrase, Job 38, 4 through 7. Where wast thou? God is asking the question. Job, if you're so smart, if you're so brilliant, Job, answer these questions. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? This is God speaking. Declare, if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened, or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So these sons of God spoken of in the book of Job are sons of God that are in the presence of God in heaven. And they present themselves to him, and they rejoice when he spoke the world into existence, when he laid the foundations of the earth, okay? So they were there. The only other time this phrase, sons of God, is used in the Old Testament is in Genesis 6, when it says the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Now, there's a major debate over this issue. There's many people believe different things on that. We're going to leave that and continue with my understanding of it, because I'm the one that's teaching. So I hope that's palatable for you. There's 2 other passages that we use to get the idea that the sons of God spoken of in Genesis and in the Old Testament are indeed angels. And those would be Jude, verse 5 through 8, and Peter. But we'll get there in a minute. I will therefore put you in remembrance, though ye once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterwards destroyed them that believed not. And the angels which kept not their first estate, this is referring to the angels in Genesis that left their heavenly abode, left their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. Now look at this. That word there, going after strange flesh, he's equating that to these angels which left their first estate. They went after strange flesh. Are set for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. One more verse. Likewise also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. So, strange flesh. These guys are going after strange flesh. What is strange flesh? Well, this is Strong's definition, or some of it, in relation to strange flesh. Another flesh, i.e., one not of the same nature, form, class, kind, different, or altered. God is using the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in the same way he's using the story of the angels in Genesis 6 when they left their first estate and came and went after strange flesh. These sons of God took daughters of men, of all which they chose. That was angels that could have remained in heaven, could have remained subject to God, but they left their estate in heaven and chose baser things. 2 Peter 2, 4 through 6 uses the same analogies, except he throws in the one with the flood. For God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them in chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, and saved Noah. He's talking about the story of Noah and the flood. Why God is sending the flood is because of these angels. The eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example of those that after should live ungodly. Oops. So that's the passages that we have to go off of, in my mind, referring to the sons of God in Genesis 6 as definitely angels that left their first estate. Now, there are other passages that are a little more vague in Isaiah and Ezekiel that people like to use, but it's not the main point of my message. The point of my message is that the seed line became under attack, and that's what we're here to look at today. So, we're going to give a real quick history of the Bible up until the time of David, okay? And I'll expound on some of these, but I hope you can follow my train of thought. The promised seed, Genesis 3. Genesis 3, Adam and Eve sinned. God makes a promise about a seed coming. Genesis 6, we have the angelic rebellion and we have giants. And what are they doing? Destroying all flesh. What if they had succeeded and got Noah and his family? Could the Messiah have come? No. You realize that God let the gene pool get so narrow it was down to one man and his family. But God in his faithfulness, as he says in Psalms, I preserve both man and beast, did just that and brings in a judgment. The first judgment, Genesis 7. Genesis 7, he judges this rebellion. No, you guys can't do this. I'll judge that. And he makes a covenant with Abraham and to his seed. Important that we remember he made it to his seed, Genesis 9. And then what do we see? Noah gets out of the ark and boom, Tower Babel. Let us come, make a name, let us do what we want to do. It's the rebellion and judgment. So they rebel about what God says, go into all the world. He wanted them to fill the whole earth. And they said, no, let's gather together here, make a city, make a name, and become great. And God judges them by confusing the languages. Aaron did an excellent job last week, in my opinion, of talking about the different rebellions. But that's in Genesis 11. And then Chedorlaomer, the king, smote the Rephaim giants in Genesis 14. In Genesis 14, Chedorlaomer, however you say his name, he goes down to Sodom and Gomorrah. And there's giants there. They're called Rephaim, giants. Look the word up in Strong's, it says giants, great tall men. You can say 6 feet, 7 feet. I mean, History Channel will tell you they're 7 feet, 6 foot 6 inches to 7 feet tall. And the average man back then was 5 foot tall. So that's why these guys at 6 foot 6 look like giants. You can smell your way through that. But anyways, did you realize that the giants' destruction was mentioned in Genesis 14? When this king goes down and fights against this confederacy and destroys some of the giants. And then God makes a covenant with Abraham for land and seed. So God says, Abraham, he verbalizes to everything that is, this piece of terra firma is going to be yours, and I'm going to give it to your descendants. Okay? Genesis 17. God makes that promise to Abraham. Now, I'm condensing these times, and I hope you can forgive me for not reading the whole Old Testament for you, but this is generally where most of the stuff is condensed. In 17, God makes the covenant with Abraham. And then God judges Sodom. Chedorlaomer judged Sodom, or the areas around Sodom full of judgment. God makes a covenant with Abraham, and Sodom's too close. So God comes down and wipes out Sodom. Get out. Kills them. Genesis 19, it eradicates Sodom. And God provides a wife for Isaac, not from Canaan. Extremely important. Does the same thing for Jacob, not from Canaan. What's the big deal? Did you know that God didn't tell Isaac and God didn't tell Abraham not to get a wife for their sons from Canaan? I can find. God didn't say that. This was their sentiment. And you can read what Rebekah says about this. She says to Isaac, she says, Isaac, Jacob is of age. If he marries a daughter from Canaan, my life was not worth living. It would have been better for me to have died than that my son should marry someone from Canaan. Now, I'm going to explain to you, hopefully in vulgar detail, the covenant that Abraham had his servant make when he went to get a wife for Isaac. Have you ever heard the story where he places his hand under his thigh? I've read scholars on that passage. And what's the deal with putting your hand under the thigh? Well, from what I can find, from what I read, what Abraham wanted his servant to do was grab his seed and say, I swear before God, I will not allow your seed to enter a Canaanite woman. It wasn't quite under the thigh. Okay? That was the covenant. Do you see what Abraham's doing? Abraham, or servant, you shall not get me a wife for my son from Canaan. You can't do that. Swear to me before the Lord and on this oath that you make with me. Why? God didn't say that. What was the land of Canaan like? Well, we'll find out in 470 years, because that's what happened. 7 years of famine. We read the story of Joseph in Genesis chapter 45 when he reveals himself to his brothers. And we think, God preserved Joseph. Wonderful. What do you think was happening back in Canaan? 7 years of famine. God takes Abraham, preserves his son and his grandson from marrying Canaanites, and then removes them out of the land of Canaan and says, go down to Egypt and dwell there, while he starves out the land of Canaan for 7 years. Most places that have 7 years of drought have a lot of death. But God, in interest of preserving the seed, sends a forerunner. Okay? sends Joseph. Go down to Egypt, Joseph. Get things set up. I'm preserving my seed line. I'm bringing them down there. Get it ready. And what did he do? He went and did that, right? I'm adding a bunch of stuff in here, but you get the point. Exodus 1, Pharaoh commands that all males be killed. Another attempt at the seed, right? Kill all the males. Interesting stuff. 430 years they sojourn in Egypt, and then the Exodus. But they're in Egypt for 430 years. And then 40 more years wandering in the wilderness. So 470 years from the time Jacob leaves Canaan till they're headed back to Canaan. Do you reckon something happened in Canaan while they were gone for 470 years? Satan knew God had made a verbal, out loud, audible promise to Abraham. You're going to get this dirt. And from this location, the seed will come. What seed? Does anybody know who we're looking for? Come on, tell me. Somebody tell me who we're looking for. We're looking for the Messiah. Do you know why he's after the seed? Sure you know why he's after the seed. I've got to kill him. And he's going to try anything he can. Then the Lord destroyed the giants before Esau. Wait, they're not even in Canaan yet. This doesn't have anything to do with the Israelites. They're headed on their way back to Canaan through their 40 years of wandering, and God says, don't mess with this nation of people, because those are Esau's descendants, and I've already gone before them and driven out all the giants. Did you know that? Who knew that God went in before Esau and drove out the giants and said to the children of Israel, don't bother their land. I've already purged that land. Well, it's in there. Deuteronomy 2. Deuteronomy 2 does an excellent job of explaining that story. I wish we had time to read all of Deuteronomy 2, but we don't. And then the giants driven out of Canaan, Joshua 12. If you read every single time the word giant or giants or Rephaim appears in the Old Testament, you'll find that it's narrowing it down to just a few people. At the end, it's only 3. There's only 3 men, male giants, that are having offspring. They're called the sons of Anak, and you can look them up and read about them. Some call them Emims, some call them Zanzumims, but they're different. There's 5 different family lines. And then Caleb drove thence the 3 sons of Anak, Judges chapter 1. You can read that story in Judges chapter 1, where he comes in and he eradicates this threat. Okay, let me ask you, why were the giants a threat? Because it says they ate up the inhabitants of the land. They were cannibals. You can read about that in extra biblical texts. They were cannibals. They ate up the inhabitants of the land. What else were they doing? If there was perverted DNA, corrupted man and beast, or man and angel stuff, it would pervert the whole human race. It would be corrupted, and then what would it ultimately do? Destroy the avenue for the seed to come. But God is not asleep. We're so thankful for that. Giants in Canaan. Now we're going to look at some biblical texts, and then we're going to move on to our second part. Numbers 33, 32 through 33. And they brought up an evil report of the land when they had searched out the children of Israel, saying, the land, though through which we have gone to search it, is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in theirs. Deuteronomy 2, 10 through 12 says, the Emims dwelt there in times past, a great people, and many and tall, as the Anakims, which also were accounted giants as the Anakims, but the Moabites called them Emims. The Horims also dwelt in Seir before time, but the children of Esau succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did unto the land of his possession, which the Lord had given them. So God gave Esau a piece of land, and he went before him and drove out these giants. And then we have most of the story talking about the driving out of the giants in Canaan, because that's what Aaron said yesterday. Or last week, I chose Jacob. Jacob was his inheritance. I'm going to work with this inheritance and build this. I'm going to rule Jacob in the land of Canaan, right? So that's where most of our textual evidence is dealing with giants, is it's in the land of Canaan. But it's interesting that there's a snippet of information of God dealing with the giants through Esau, like getting them out of the way for Esau too. Deuteronomy 2:20-23 says, that also was accounted a land of giants. Giants dwell there in old times, and the Ammonites called them Zamzummims. A great people and many and tall as the Anakims, but the Lord destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead. And he did as he did to the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir before he destroyed the Horims from before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead, even until this day. And the Avims, which dwelt in Hazarim, even unto Asa, the Caphtorims, which came before out of Caphtor, destroyed them and dwelt in their stead. Now there's multiple passages of Scripture that talk about this purging before Esau and before the children of Israel. Isn't that interesting? Get these guys out of here. So, Joshua says, 13:12, all the kingdoms of Og and Bashan, which reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, who remained of the remnants of the giants, for these did Moses smite and cast them out. Something's interesting. A few weeks ago when I preached about this, I showed how God was very selective, and I don't have the passage in here, but there's a tribe where God tells the children of Israel to go in and kill them. Moses is with them still, and they eradicate them, and they bring all the women back. And Moses and the priests get angry, and he says, why did you bring the women back? Don't you remember when the women led the children of our ancestors astray to sin in the way, and they led them into this stuff, paganism and all kinds of idolatry? He says, go throughout the camp of this enemy. He says, you have to burn and melt everything down. If it sustains the fire, gold and silver, you can keep what's melted down, but it's got to be cleaned by fire. And then he says, you can only have the virgins. Go throughout the land and find out which one has laid with a man and kill her. If she hasn't lain with a man, you can have her. Why? Defilement. Really interesting that he would be that specific in wiping out a nation. He boils it down. You can have the stuff as long as you burn it all, and you can take the women as a prey as long as they're all still virgins. Interesting. I wasn't going to add that, but I did anyways. Deuteronomy 9:1-2 says, hear, O Israel, thou art to pass over Jordan this day, and to go in to possess nations greater and mightier than thyself, cities great and fenced up to heaven, a people great and tall, the children of the Anakims, whom thou knowest, and of whom thou hast heard, saying, who can stand before the children of Anak? There's a lot more in the scripture about giants, but I'm not adding them all. And then this is the last one, Amos 2:9. God's talking about having destroyed these nations, these groups of people before the children of Israel. He says, yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his root from beneath. Fruit and the root. He eradicated this defiled seed line. That's what God did there. And by the way, a 7-foot tall guy would not, in my mind, equate to being as tall as a cedar tree. I mean, you could say God's exaggerating, although I don't think he's a liar, and he doesn't exaggerate. But he's saying these people were as tall as cedar trees and strong as oaks. I've cut a lot of oak trees, and I've never seen a 7-foot, 8-foot tall man as strong as an oak. And it's very important that he says as strong as the oaks, because gargantuanism in our modern times is people that get 6, 7, 8 feet tall, and they're sickly. They can't even hold their own body weight up. That's not what he's talking about here. And he makes that very clear by saying there's this tall and this strong. So it's very important that he says that. Okay, the last giants. David's getting the last of them. 2 Samuel 21, 16, and then 19 through 20. And Ishbibenob, which was the son of the sons of the giant, the height of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight, he being girded with a sword, thought to have slain David, but he thought wrong. He had help and got killed. And there was again a battle in Gob with the Philistines, and Elhanan, the son of somebody, the Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet a battle in Gath. There was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. Okay, you've got scriptural evidence here of people with 6 digits on each hand and 6 toes. Interesting fact, every skeleton that has been found throughout antiquity that has had 6 digits has also had 2 rows of teeth. And all the teeth are molars. They don't have canines up here. They have molars the whole way around, 2 rows of them. You don't have to believe that. You can say that's as wacky as Hollywood. But I'm just telling you that's what we find. But here's scriptural evidence of a guy that has 12 fingers and 12 toes. You know, if we have to do multiplications by 12, I sure wish I had 12. It'd make it a lot easier. These kids teaching them math, we stop at 10. You always need 2 more, right? Anyways, interesting stuff. Isn't this interesting? Did you know all this was in the Bible? Sure you did. Maybe you did. Okay, now we're going to look at ancient texts. Now I'm going to deviate from the scripture, so forewarning, I don't think this is scripture. That's why I said it's ancient text. It's no longer canonical scripture that we're going to read. But what I'm trying to do is show you that you can verify the ideas of giants and God preserving his seed line through multiple different sources. You can see that seed line was preserved through the scripture, biblical text, physically preserved, like Jesus. Well, we'll get there. Then you have the ancient text, ancient writings about the seed line being preserved. And then you have archaeology about the seed line being preserved. And then you have today. And today's kind of difficult to navigate through because it's today, right? Okay, 1 Enoch 15. But now the giants who are born from the union of the spirits and the flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, because their dwelling shall be upon the earth and inside the earth. Evil spirits have come out of their bodies, because from the day that they were created from the holy ones, they became the watchers. Their first origin is the spiritual foundation. Okay, reading some of these ancient texts is kind of like, well, if you're used to reading the Bible, some of them just don't, the verbiage is different, right? You can just tell right away the vocabulary, the English, I think we would maybe call it grammar, is different. It's just not same writing style. But the reason I'm bringing this out is because there's all kinds of ancient writings that talk about this. 2 Enoch 18 says, and 3 of them descended on the earth from the Lord's throne out of the place Urim, or in the biblical text called Mount Horeb. Very interesting. You can verify that. And they broke the promises on the shoulder of Mount Horeb. And they saw the daughters of men, how beautiful they were, and they took wives for themselves, and the earth was defiled by their deeds. I want to ask you a question. What is the strongest temptation known to man? You shouldn't have to think to answer that. Come on. All right, let me add, thank you. Anybody under 16, especially if you're male, what's the strongest temptation known to man? Your sexual desire. It's not even a question. What tempts you? Come on, you can be bold. Beautiful women. It's no lie. You don't have to be ashamed of it. Beautiful women attract you. And good thing, too. I'm glad my mom and dad were attracted to each other. Do you think it's interesting that Satan takes this desire for beautiful women, and it's so strong that he gets angels, sons of God, to fall for it? Has he changed his tactic? He's been using sexual perversion, making women who are beautiful, and God, some of them are godly, but he's been perverting that and turning them into a product and abusing them for generations. And it's interesting that a godly man will preserve his beautiful counterpart and not exploit her. It's interesting that God cared about the first man and woman, and when they fell into sin, what did he do? He clothed them. When Jesus loved you and birthed you again, what did he do? He clothed you in a robe of righteousness. So if you're a godly man, clothe your woman, okay? I wasn't even going to preach on modesty today. But anyways, there you go. In a nutshell, Jubilees 4, and he called his name Jared, for in his day the angels of the Lord descended on the earth, those who are named the Watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth. Now, Jubilees goes on to show this is what their job was. They were watchers. There was 200 of them, and you can verify that. And their job was to watch over the happenings of the earth. But they got led away, and they made a pact to leave their heavenly realm and their access to heaven and be chained down here. Well, that's what happened to them. And he was there with the angels of God 6 jubilees of years. So however many years. And they showed him everything which is on earth and in heaven, the dominion of the Son, and he wrote everything and bore witness to the watchers, the ones who sinned with the daughters of men, because they began to mingle themselves with the daughters of men, so that they might be polluted. And Enoch bore witness against all of them. 3 Maccabees 2, thou didst destroy those who aforetime did iniquity, among whom were giants, trusting in their strength and boldness, bringing up upon them the boundless flood of water. Didst burn up with fire and brimstone the men of Sodom, workers of arrogance, who had become known of all for their crimes, and did make them an example of those who should come afterwards. Peter even talks about that. Jude talks about that. Josephus, for many angels of God accompanied with women and begat sons that proved unjust and despisers of all that was good, on account of the confidence they had in their own strength. For the tradition is that these men did what resembled the acts of those whom the Grecians called giants. The Jewish antiquities. In the era around Hebron, Israel, the early Israelites wiped out a race of giants who had bodies so large and countenances so entirely different from other men that they were amazing to the sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike any credible relations of other men. Now, you can do what you want with this. We're going to get to archaeological evidence in a minute, but it says the bones of these men are still shown to this very day. Okay? They had archaeological evidence of giant bones, okay? It's going to be pretty hard for you to find any today, and that's a discussion for a whole nother time. Damascus document, brave heroes stumbled on account of them from ancient times until now. For having walked in the stubbornness of their hearts, the watchers of the heavens fell on account of it. They were caught, for they did not follow the precepts of God in the same way their sons fell, whose height was like that of the cedars. Interesting. So here are some other ancient writings you can look at. I didn't put excerpts out of these, but if you want to look at these, you can. The Book of Giants, the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's where some of that information actually comes from, but the Dead Sea Scrolls talk about them. Pseudo Clementine, 300 to 320 AD, he talked about them. I don't even know how to pronounce that name, but 133 to 190 AD. Tertullian, he wrote about them. Origen, he wrote about them. Clement of Rome, 96 years AD. The giants were men of immense bodies whose bones of enormous size are still shown in certain places for confirmation of their existence. Now, that was written about 100 years after Christ's crucifixion or ascension, whatever we date that by. And he's saying right there, he says, whose bones of enormous size are still shown in certain places for confirmation of this. When anybody digs up an above average bone today, and it goes to a paleontologist and they measure it, the difference is between, they're trying to verify that this is a giant, a 6-foot tall guy. I mean, you're dealing in little fractions of an inch. Oh, it's this much bigger. He must have been 6'6". He was a giant. You know, I don't think these bones that this guy's talking about, you had to question. I mean, I think if you had a femur, you probably had one this tall. I don't think it was a question at all. Now, you can disagree, but that's fine. Eusebius, he talks about them. Justin Martyr, he talks about them. This guy, he talks about them. Abraham Lincoln talks about them. Abraham Lincoln writes about them, and I was going to put the paragraph that he wrote about the giants when he went and saw Niagara Falls. He writes a paragraph in one of his biographies about going and touring or seeing Niagara Falls for the first time, and he mentions about the giants. So now we're going to look at archaeology. That was ancient text. You can do with that what you want to do. We're deviating a little bit from the beautiful story of the preservation of the seed, but I want to show you some things about archaeology. Now, mostly, archaeology is difficult for me, so I spent 80% of my time preparing this message trying to verify archaeological discoveries about giants, and it's almost impossible. You have got to physically go to physical archives in old museums and old libraries because you can't use anything on the internet. Okay, you just can't. But I'll give you some clues. So that picture there and the next picture is pictures of giant skeletons, right? And I'm here to tell you that 100% of them are considered fake. 100%. There's over 100 photos on the internet like this, and 100% of them have been declassified as fake. Almost as fake as NASA's photos, but not quite. That was a side note. They're all considered fake. 100% of them are fake. Okay, they're all fake. I can't verify one of them. I'm not joking. I can't verify that this is a true photo because there's a lot of work that has been done to defame the idea of these giant skeletons. But if you want to find somebody who's an archaeologist who has factual, irrefutable evidence, you can't argue it, you can go touch it, you can hold it, you can look at it, you can go dig some up with him. It's Brian Forrester. Brian Forrester is working in South America with the Inca people and Peru and different places down in South America, and he is currently finding giant skeletons down there. If you want to, he's recently done DNA sampling on some of them and had it sampled by reputable colleges, and one of the colleges would not respond back to him when they sampled it. They just said, we found nothing in these bones. All the other 3 colleges found interesting stuff about the bones. But if you want to study somebody who's doing this, this is the only guy I could tell you, hey, study this guy, he's got some facts. Verifiable facts. So here's another picture, again, deemed a fake. I want you to know that I am not telling you these are real. Okay, I'm not telling you that's real. But I ain't telling you it's fake either. I don't know. You can't get online and read through and verify them. But there's at least 100 different photos of giant skeletons that have been excavated. And I'm going to say it'd be my understanding that at least 50% of them are fake. There's been a lot of photoshopping around this idea of giants. So I don't even think they're all real. But I don't know if that one's real. Couldn't tell you. Moving on. We're going to look at archaeology today by fingerprints, okay? And we're going to fingerprint the idea that there was different technologies here on Earth that we can verify. You can go, you can touch them, you can measure them, you can weigh them, you can look at them, and you can find out that nobody on Earth can duplicate what you're going to see in the next several pictures. There has been no one, mind you, that has duplicated this kind of stone masonry. It's my understanding that all the stone masonry you're about to see is pre-flood technology that was destroyed in the Great Deluge. It's architecture that will blow your minds, and nobody can duplicate it, let alone know how they do it. The best explanation we get is that guys with copper chisels spend their day chipping away at rocks. I'll give you a copper chisel if you want to try that. Look at some of these. I'm going to turn that light off, see if that helps that picture come out any better. Maybe you could turn that other one off. You might see it a little better, Emily. The stone masonry in this stuff is just astonishing. Look at that. They say some of these stones are put so tightly together you can't even compress air through them. They're that sealed. You cannot put compressed air through those stones. And it's some people's idea that this stone masonry was built this way to be able to withstand earthquakes. But they didn't calculate a flood, so it didn't work. Look at the size of some of these stones. There's handprints in some of these stones that would baffle your mind. So some people think they had a way of making these stones somewhat like Play-Doh or putty and forming them to fit there. They weren't actually, they had some way through vibration or whatever to make them more liquefied and form them. It's all speculation. I don't know. Scientists don't know. I can't duplicate it, and neither can they. Look at the size of these stones. Isn't that incredible? I mean, that was a cut stone. Somebody sawed that stone. And if you care to look at a whole bunch more pictures, you can find saw marks and bore marks where they bored holes through them, perfectly round holes, through a 3-foot wide boulder. And you can see the teeth marks of whatever bored through there. And you can look at it and say, well, it wasn't a copper chisel this time, or maybe it was a copper drill. I don't know. That would cut stone. I doubt it. The size of these stones are just unbelievable. Some of those stones, so I'll try to see if I can get my mouse to work. This stone right here starts over here and ends right here. It's over 1,000 tons. It's over 1,000 tons. This is probably one of my favorites. I don't know if you can see the guy standing there, but he's kind of like a midget. And I'm guessing the guys that built those, if I walked up to them, I'd feel like a grasshopper. And they'd probably be as tall as a cedar tree. And I'm guessing they'd be as strong as an oak. Whoever built that. You know, they found some pillars that have been buried and have not been exposed to the elements for years. And they can see cut marks in them where they've been turned on like a lathe. 100-ton stone pillar where it has rotary cut marks all the way around it. The reason why I'm throwing in the rocks and not giant skeletons to verify that big men lived, and we have technology back then that's nothing new under the sun, like Solomon said, there was nothing new under the sun. They had technology back there that we don't know anything about. We can't duplicate this, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you. This is the world's largest front-end loader. It is downright massive. It's so big they have to wrap the tires in chains so that rocks won't destroy the tires. Its capacity is 80 ton. That's all it can lift, 80 ton. That one weighs over 1,500 tons. The one they're standing on is cut on all sides. They've dug around it. It's cut on all sides. It weighs over 1,700 tons. There's no earth-moving equipment on planet Earth that can hook up to that stuff and move it. Here's a picture of what it would take just to get it an inch off the ground. And that's a toy picture. That's just a mock-up. But that's how many of big cranes like that it would take just to be able to lift it, and they couldn't go anywhere with it.
You must be one real good operator.
So I can't verify any skeletons, but they left a fingerprint behind that nobody can decipher, even myself. Don't know. I can just tell you the stories that were told. Like if you go there and read a little plaque, it's going to say, men sat with copper chisels and chiseled away for hundreds of years and skidded these things on greased logs. And they actually have little videos of guys going along before and 10,000 Israelites hooked up to ropes, skidding these rocks and dumping buckets of grease down on the ground to skid these things on grease rails, because they said that's how they did it. They cut them with copper or bronze chisels, and they skidded them on greased rails. I've moved a few heavy things in my life. That ain't skidding on greased rails. There reaches a point of time where the equipment that you have to move that exceeds the manpower you can get around to move that. And so if you were moving that with logs and ropes, you'd need another 100 tons of equipment, which means you need how many more men just to move the 100 tons of equipment? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay, so current times, that was archaeology. It's hard to talk about archaeology because it's been so butchered. It's very hard to verify good archaeological findings. I want to tell you that it would be a lot easier to believe the establishment if they didn't fire everybody from mainstream colleges that came up with a different view than what's in the textbooks. Okay? But that's really happening. Academic people that have spent their life in knowledge and wisdom and careers in studying this kind of stuff, and they publish one paper that doesn't fit the establishment, and they get a paper in the mail saying they're barred from that college where they've taught. They're 3 years from retirement. And it's like, oh, you can't teach here anymore. You were fired. If they didn't do that, their story would be a little more likely to believe. Okay, current times. Daniel. That's not current times, but it's telling us about current times. 2:42 through 44. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be part strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. There you see the seed again, seed of men. But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and his kingdom shall not be left to other people. But it shall break in pieces and consume all those kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Mingle themselves with the seed of men. What is going on? Well, I hate to break it to you. Again, I can't tell you because I'm not a prophet and I don't know. But I can tell you there's a lot going on in our world that you probably should know about. Please, just do me one favor. Don't stick your head in the sand and spend the rest of your life consuming GMO foods and think it doesn't do anything to you. Please, do a little research. Don't continue to inject stuff into your body without doing research, because what they're producing now has been proven to snip out parts of DNA and corrupt the bloodline of people. This is a guy you can look up. He'll tell you all about that. CRISPR-Cas9, you've probably heard of that technology. It was invented in the 2008, I think, when it was started. CRISPR-Cas9 is where they can edit genes. They go in and they snip out genes. And there's a scientist, he just got released this year because he was in jail for 3 years for editing a set of twin girls' DNA. And here's how it works. It's a simple process if you know how to do it. It's just like a little pair of scissors. You inject this and inject that. If I was to inject you with CRISPR-9 as a born person, everybody here is already born, right? It won't pass on to your seed, okay? It's not, What I do to you is going to stay with you. All right? So if you get CRISPR-Cas9 technology done to you, they have, this is kind of what it does. They do it for all kinds of sicknesses and disease. They can inject a certain thing into your eye, and it has restored people's eyesight. But it's basically a gene editing software that they put into your eye, and it snips out things that make your eye not see and helps the DNA know how to choose pathways that will make your eyesight grow and increase, and so then you can see again. I just didn't crawl out of a cave and I don't have a tinfoil hat on. I mean, you can verify this stuff. What I'm telling you now, you can read and verify. I mean, this is factual stuff. Okay? Now, if they did that to you, it's not going to affect your genealogy. But if they do it when an egg is fertilized, at the time of fertilization, it becomes part of the person and is now in their gene for life, and it will pass down through generations. So the reason the guy went to jail for 3 years for doing this is not because he messed with somebody's eyesight or fixed somebody's hearing or helped someone else. It's because he took these twin eggs and sperm and put this in there at fertilization so that it's now in their DNA. It's part of them. It will pass down through them. And you need to know that that technology is about 10 years old, and technology like this is exponential. So it really goes pretty far. Genetically modified mosquitoes. This is something you should know about. This has been done to mosquitoes. Bill Gates was the guy that did this, so you could thank him for that if you feel he's thankworthy. Down in Florida, this has already happened. You can go see it. They genetically modified a mosquito, actually thousands of them, 10,000s of them, so that when the mosquito, it's only males, they grow male mosquitoes, and they cut this, they put CRISPR-9 stuff in there, and it cuts out this and helps fix this, so that when they go out and mate with the mosquitoes in the wild, no female mosquitoes will ever be born. All the female mosquito eggs will die, and only males will survive. Now, this has already been done, so they feel like they can wipe out the mosquito population in simply a few years by not allowing any female mosquitoes to be born. And you can say, Dave, you're joking. No, Dave's not joking. I wish I was joking, but it's true. It's true. And some idiot let that stuff loose in the public, okay? Now, let's hope this technology doesn't go to men, because Pharaoh could have used this really good back in his day. He could have just given everybody a vaccine and they couldn't produce any men. And then what would he have done? Pharaoh would have made good use of that technology. Bill Gates and GMOs, you all know too well about those. Does anybody know that 3 years ago they started to take the DNA from a hairy mammoth and cross it with an elephant, and they hope within a few years to be able to reproduce hairy mammoths and bring them back out of extinction? All I can tell you is messing with things you probably shouldn't be messing with. Elon Musk's Neuralink brain implants. You know how far that technology is today, where they actually sew things into your brain. They're starting to call them X-Men. Well, there's a picture of one if you've never seen one. That was the early stages of them. Now they're totally sealed in. You can't see them. They work off something they sew in your side over here, and they run a cord up your blood vessel into your brain, and it sews 2,000 little wires into different neurons in your brain so they can communicate with you. You can watch videos on it. Paralyzed people that can't walk, they put this stuff in there, and they turn it on, and the person thinks, and they start to walk. Now, it's a little bit robotic, but it does work. They can walk. You can look at a person, they turn it off, they can't walk. They can try, they got to grab their canes, and they turn it back on, and then they can walk. It's no lie. You can verify that stuff. That's where they're headed. Now, that's obviously a CGI image. This is not where they're headed. This is where we've been. We already have chickens that grow in houses where they don't have feathers, because we raised them so that they don't have feathers. Why are we doing this? Who made us God? Not a good idea. There's another thing they've done to animals. That's a bull. And pay attention that the genetic stuff that they're doing to animals makes gargantuism. Makes big, 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 big. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Giants. The big one is a genetically modified salmon that was crossed with an eel from the ocean. No lie, they're farming them in Canada right now. If you buy salmon from the store, it's probably farm-raised salmon from Canada that has been crossed with an eel. And they grow really, really big. Okay? Kind of like, man, kind of depressing now, right, isn't it? We were in Genesis 6. Well, we were in Genesis 6. We were discussing what's going on and showing you that genetic anomalies are not that odd. They're not that rare. They've happened all down through history when people get to messing with things. But they're not natural. They're not what God has done for us. So, we see the war against the seed continued. Okay, and that's where we're going to get excited. David kills the last of the giants. I don't have the chapter, but you could go back and find the chapter. It's 2 Samuel something. And you see Israel under attack. So we're going to pick up that story. We were following along. Caleb kills 3 giants. David gets the last ones. Goliath and his 3 brothers. But then you see something different happen. Israel is now under attack. Why? Because a seed is coming. God makes a promise to David that he's going to have a descendant always sitting on his throne. Just a guess, who do you think is going to be under severe attack? What bloodline in Israel is going to be under more attack now? Judah or Simeon? Judah, because he's the line the seed's coming through. Well, what do you see? You see David under severe attack. And when the days be fulfilled, thou shalt sleep with thy father. I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. God made a promise. Oh, if you're Satan, well, you can forget. I mean, the rest of the Israelites, you'd like to kill them, but now you've honed it in. You've got to follow the guy sitting on the throne, right? And that's why the descendants of David were always under severe attack. Kill him. Started with Saul. David gets anointed, kill the guy. Because it's through his seed the Messiah is coming. You see that? Pretty neat. Throne line of David is under attack. Satan's goal is to kill the seed. We see that. One last blind attempt. We go all the way up. Remember the story of the king? Israel was taken over because they rebelled against God, and they sent somebody in to, God sent somebody in to purge them. And they killed all the king's sons, and a servant hid one. This wasn't Jonathan's heirs. This is a different story. And one of David's males was left. One. He almost got him. Well, he almost got, I mean, it was down to Noah in the Old Testament. Or, I mean, in Genesis, it's down to Noah. And now it's down to one man, and he gets escaped. And the seed line continues. And we get to Jerusalem. It's 5 BC. He hasn't quite eradicated the race, but he doesn't know where there's at. Where's the line of David anymore? Matthew 2:16. And Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Why Bethlehem? Why Bethlehem? Why did he... I mean, the wise men are coming. He says he's going to be born there. Well, go there and kill everybody that's 2 years old and under, and make sure you get all the little surrounding villages. Kill them all. Micah 5:2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, Though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me. That is to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from of old, from everlasting. That's why Bethlehem. Go kill everybody 2 years old and younger. I don't know that he's there, but if you kill them all, you're surely going to get him. Then Jesus starts to do miracles. And what do the devils proclaim? I know you, who you are. You're the seed. Right? That's what they do. The devil, and he says, shut up. Come out. Thought he had him in Bethlehem. Did he have him? No. Sad story. And then his successful last attempt. Satan's successful at last. He's going to kill the seed. So he thought. John 13:26 through 28 says, Jesus answered, He it is to whom I shall give a sup when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sup, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. And after the sup, Satan entered into him. Then said Jesus unto him, That thou doest, do quickly. Now no man at the table knew for what intent he had said this unto him. I wish you had the time to watch Nathan Pearl's sermon on the story told by Gabriel about Jesus. Because now Satan has an inroad. He's got one of the 12. He's got an in. And what's he going to do? He's going to kill the seed. He's finally got him. John 19:15 through 17. But they cried out, Away with him, away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, We have no king but Caesar. Then delivered he him therefore unto them to be crucified, and they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went forth into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Golgotha, where they crucified him, and the two others with him, on either side one, and Jesus in the midst. He got the seed. Thousands of years of effort. Millions of people died. Billions of people died. He's after this one, and he finally got him. Now he can reign supreme. And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. And he was dead. Corinthians 2:7 through 8. But we speak of the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes of this world knew. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. He didn't win. Oh my goodness, when Jesus must have shown up in the underworld and took the keys of death and hell and triumphed over them openly, making a show of it. I mean, the devils were saying, oh, poop. Why? Why? Because now there's not just one seed. There's not just one seed anymore. We killed the seed. No! We made billions more. 1 Peter 3:18, For Christ hath once suffered for sin, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit. Oh man, I could read the whole New Testament right now. John 1:12, But as many as receive him, to them gave he power to what? Become who? The sons of God. Even to them that believe on his name. 1 Peter 2:21 through 23, and we'll close. And even hereunto are ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow in his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, who when he was reviled not again, when he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. Family, don't consider it strange, considering the fiery trials which is to try you. as though some strange thing has happened to you. He tried to kill the seed. Do you think he's not going to try to kill you? He will. He's going to fight you every step of the way. He wants your death. But we have such a hope in Jesus Christ because he says of himself, I am he that preserveth both man and beast. And even though Satan thought he had God, God had the upper hand. And so it is with us. You can trust him. Commit yourself to him that judges righteously. Let's pray.